I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Oh, I have a quick question. I have a quick question.
Oh, we're live. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go.
but what the Q&A is towards the end, yes?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and we'll feed questions to Gigi to feed to you, so you don't have to man the Q&A or the chat. We'll do that, and we'll just read them to you or feed them to you.
Okay, sounds
I'm going to
good.
start the webinar in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. We're just getting everyone settled into the webinar. We'll get started. Thank you for being here. Please note as you enter, if you need captioning, please click on the live transcript in your Zoom bar and you will receive captioning for our event. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Good morning and thank you for attending yet another amazing event at our Diversity and Culture Festival, part of Multicultural Week here at our district and in collaboration with Oxnard College. Today, I'm very excited to have our guest presenter and performer, Ivan Paredes, a.k.a. Jahny Wallz, who is a veteran, actually, of the Diversity and Culture Festival. We've been so fortunate that he has joined us many, many times over the years, both on stage and actually also in a more presentation lecture-based event. Jahny was raised in a cross-cultural environment. He identifies with Mexican American roots. He is a big part of the music industry, recording, performing, behind the scenes. Now he's taking a role as instructor and he's looking at advancing into higher education and coming out looking at studying ethnomusicology. We're so happy to have him here with us and sharing his journey of music and identity. And thank you for being here. I'm going to kind of hand it over to you, Jahny, and welcome for being part of our, thank you for being part of our festival.
Most definitely. Thank you so much, Gigi. Can you guys hear me?
Maybe a little bit higher volume, a little difficult to hear you.
Sorry, randomly outside of my home, they decided to start drilling today. Yeah, perfect. But it's okay. You know what? That's how life is. You know, they throw you things and you have to carry on. So if you hear a little bit of construction outside, I can't control it. They didn't tell me anything. It is what it is. But I'm very happy to be here at this diversity festival. Like Gigi said, I've been here a few times. I've performed on stage. I've done a workshop, like drum workshop, and I've also done like a storytelling type of a seminar. But I'm gonna just start playing some music here because the drilling outside is a little crazy here. So I'm just gonna start playing some stuff because guess what? Today, we will be talking about music. So if we can drown out a little bit of the thrum, it'll be great. So it's Chicano identity via music, drum and dance. And so, you know, you might be wondering, well, why music? Drum and dance. Well, I'm of mixed race, right? I'm mestizo, right? So I didn't really know much about my identity growing up. So that is why like this whole concept of Chicano identity via drum and dance sort of came about. And I was blessed to get an education, get higher education. I mean, it was different as opposed to a lot of people I grew up with. I was blessed to go through the right path and you know, pursue an education. And I started learning a little bit about my history because I realized that because of my upbringing, it wasn't very known. There was a lot of prejudices, you know, amongst even family, society, and there wasn't a lot of history, you know, especially being biracial. So, you know, that's one of the things that, you know, I'm very happy to be here, you know, to go over a little bit of what Chicano identity means for me, right? So I want you to know that it pertains to me, you know, and as an artist, and hopefully it can influence, you know, and inspire other artists or other up-and-coming artists in the arts to do the same, you know. So let's see. So in a nutshell, I talk to you, it'll be kind of like a playlist, a musical playlist of myself, right? I'll talk about some of the, you know, the music that influenced my life and how drum dance is connected to me, right? In my genealogical roots. Because like I said, it wasn't very known, but now I've been able to sort of understand, even through music. So dissecting, and just dissecting some of the music, right? So like I mentioned, I was born in Mexicali, Baja California in 1983. I had family in the States already. I sort of grew up in that bicultural environment. When I moved in 1989 here to the States, I was ready for second grade. I was really young. My mom worked at the school, so I spent my first grade basically learning English. So I was able to adjust, and that's why I characterize as Chicano. A lot of people might be like, well, you were born in Mexico. Why you characterize as Chicano? Because I was accepted as Chicano, and I just got into the culture. It was one of those things where I'd never really had much of a problem with the language. I had problems later, like with other stuff, but I always knew, you know, I was lucky. I was lucky to be able to adjust right away. And plus, like I said, I've always had family here. My grandparents on my mom's side were American citizens. So there was always a connection. I had aunts and uncles that lived in the States. So that's the reason why, like, I knew I characterized as Chicano right away, because just even I was raised in Mexicali, which is the border. So it was a natural thing. So like I said, going back, I always knew that there was something I didn't know about myself. If you take a look at this chart, my genealogy is a little bit of everywhere, and it doesn't take this chart to tell me, you know, this is what I am. I already knew this because I was dissecting music already, and the music that was moving me, and the music that I grew up listening to. Right? So you see a big range of different places, right? So you're listening right now. Let me see where we at. So you're hearing, growing up, my parents' music was norteño music. Okay, northern Mexican music. Very accordion-based music. You're listening to a little bit of that here. And let me just restart this song. So this is stuff that I grew up listening to. Well, guess what? It's a very diverse style of music. Guess what? It's accordion bass. There's a German, French, Austrian influence in there. Why? Because of history. I ended up realizing that there was a lot of these immigrants after World War II, even before, moving to different parts of northern Mexico, Texas, primarily Texas. And even after World War II, Sinaloa and the west coast part of Mexico. And guess what? That's where I'm from. You know, my grandparents are from Sinaloa, and my other grandparents they're from Sonora. So they're very, very western, northern Mexican style. So that's the stuff that I grew up listening to. That wasn't it though. I was listening to a lot of Afro-Colombian, Caribbean music as well. And let me see. I'm wondering why. Let's see. 1 second. Okay, there it is. I'm sorry, working with the technology. But I grew up with a lot of Afro-Colombian stuff. And I grew up listening to this a lot because it was not only was it hitting in the late 80s, mid 80s to late 80s, and it was always a part of it. Cumbia, Afro-Caribbean music, cumbia, you know, and Latin America has a big relationship with cumbia, right? And in different styles, right? But it's Afro-indigenous music, okay? And European. It's everything. It's all mixed together. So I think that's why it's one of the most widely popularized dances in Latin America. And you hear it in different forms in Mexico, such as in myself. Growing up, my dad used to play it in the car all the time, like literally cassette tapes. And I was listening, and I was listening to that stuff. Ostinatos, keeping rich, and it just made you move. So that's one thing that we always listened to Colombian cumbia. I know I always liked it because it was a big part of me growing up. And another thing is whether it was norteño music, whether it was banda music, whether it was whatever, whether it was Afro-Colombian music or cumbia colombiana, whatever it was, we had a huge family, a big Mexican-American family, big Mexican family, okay? And we were encouraged to dance. We were encouraged to get out there and dance with your cousins, with your moms, with your aunts. Ever since I can remember, I was being encouraged to dance. So it was one of those things where the love for music, I never really had to develop it. I think it was always there. And you know, I was kind of underprivileged growing up. You know, I grew up mainly with a single parent with my mom. When we moved to the States, we actually left Mexico, Mexicali, we left to get away from my dad. He wasn't doing things right. But so we moved to the States, right? We moved to the States, but that was always a part of my family and my culture. Even though I didn't know, hey, you have part Yaqui Indian in you, or you have Spanish and this is what happened, or you have a little bit of African blood too, you know, or Northern African, or you have, you know, Western African blood in you, things like that, or a bunch of Moor's blood, I don't know, whatever it is, right? But I felt a lot of gypsy blood, you know what I mean? Which is all kind of mixed in there, right? I already knew that my culture had to do with drum and dance, and it makes a lot of sense. Because looking at my genealogy, it shows that I have a significant amount of indigenous blood, which is about 35%. I have a significant amount of Spanish/Moor's blood, Northern African. I have some Western African, some Southern African. I also have like Eastern European, so I'm sure there's some Gypsy mixed in there. It may be truth, it may be not, but I know that it's even in my ethnicity. And when I say ethnicity, I say in the music that I like and in the roots of the music that I like, it all matches up. So I didn't really have to, you know, like take the genealogy test, although the genealogy test reiterated or proved to me that was going on already. And one of the things that happened was when I went to Chico State University, I had already been playing since I was in high school, like late junior high and high school. I started being a part of an African dance troupe. No, an Afro-Caribbean dance troupe, Nefertiti's Dozen. And so this was specialized in Afro-Cuban and Afro-Haitian music, which was you play the drums and there's dancers and there's a choreographed dance. So for me, I was already listening to Santana. I mean, I was already listening to a lot of like East LA bands, the Brown sound, you know, Malo, El Chicano, that would have congas and drumming and involved in there. Poncho Sanchez, you know, like one of the best Chicano congueros out there. And so when I got there, when I got to the root, the folkloric root of drum and dance, I started asking myself, wait, this is powerful, because I didn't have to like be embarrassed or I couldn't hang, you know. It was difficult rhythms. It was very sophisticated rhythms, because as you can tell, I mean, in Cuba was exiled, and a lot of people educated themselves, and they were able to touch in with their roots a lot more, right? And a bunch of other things which they kept some of their African traditions mixed in with everything, like jambalaya, like all of us, you know, just mixed in. But I fell in love with rumba, right? Afro-Cuban rumba, and then even some of the Haitian rhythms, and the whole concept of drum and dance, because even though some of my culture was diluted, and maybe because of some of the strife that Mexico kind of endured, it was hard to keep a lot of our traditions alive, and especially when you're a diverse mestizo like myself, that you have Spanish blood, you have Northern African blood, you have, you know, European blood, you have Yaqui blood, you know, indigenous blood. But the one thing that I could tell you as the one thing that I always excelled in was drumming. Drumming was always something that I excelled, and it was amazing. I think that was one of the first things that I realized that I had a knack for, man. Like it was, and I'm talking about, I took classes in college, and actually one was a group, and it was called SLAP, Students of Latin and African Percussion, and we basically started doing basic rhythms of Latin and African rhythms, and I was able to excel. And I think it had to do with my upbringing and my family and the music jukebox. And I don't know if you could tell, but I'm playing music, right? And I'm just giving you an example of, this is my early music that I was listening to from my parents, from my brothers. Brothers are not too far away from me in age, so, you know, some of them were a little older, 9-10 years older. The other ones are 5 and 6. So the 5 and 6 were listening to all the American pop music, right? But my older ones were listening to a lot of the Latin American or Mexican music, right? And Mexican pop music. But a lot of it had to do with conjunto music, right? Conjunto music. Like you're listening right now, like Los Bukis. This was something that my brothers would play a lot. Let me see. So this is something my brothers were listening to a lot, and as you can hear, you hear cumbia. You hear the cumbia, and it's a Mexican style cumbia, but it's very lively, and you dance, you know. And as a little kid going to a big quinceañera, a big family function, a wedding, you had live music. I grew up with live music. That was just one of my fondest memories of my childhood. Early when we still lived in Mexico 4 and 5, and then even in the States, hiring Afro-Colombian bands, hiring a conjunto, right? Conjunto's a Northern Mexican band. And guess what? Those Northern Mexican bands played all kinds of styles. They played all kinds of rhythms, right? Rhythms that come from Colombia, rhythms that come from Cuba, different parts of Cuba, different styles. And even a little bit of a little bluesy stuff, like from the South, you know, like Texas and California, mainly Texas and the South, and with some Zydeco influences and whatnot. So anyway, so that's I think growing up not knowing much about my identity. Once I started getting into music, and it was more in my study in college, and even until now, I'm realizing that once I took my genealogy test, I was like, yes, and that makes sense. Like I said, some people are kind of against that. They're like, oh, you know, it's kind of like an estimate. It may be, but you can't tell me. When I sit and I listen to African drums and I'm doing Afro-Caribbean drumming, it just feels right. It just feels right. I don't feel out of place. And even though it's a little different than what I grew up with, the bass and the blend of cultures that I am, a lot of those roots are there. It was a new world creation, right? So let me give you an example of what conjunto music is, because I've talked to you about what it is, but conjunto music is basically accordion, drum set, guitar, bajo quinto is the type of guitar, electric bass. They'll have percussion sometimes, and sometimes they'll have a sax. But I'll have you listen to this. This has a very Caribbean flavor to it. You know, it has like a Cuban and Colombian flavor to it, but it's Texan, you know, it's Tejano, Northern Mexican.
Sabes que te quiero, Yolanda, y por ti me muero, Yolanda. Sabes que te quiero, Yolanda, y me desespero.
Again, you hear the accordion, right? That's something that is common in Northern Mexican and Western Mexican music. Why? Because German, French, Austrian, that is in our culture. It's a part of our culture, and even gypsy music, right? Gypsy music is they've tied it a lot into this norteño style. Even though this is a cumbia, though it's a rhythm that came from Colombia, but it's an indigenous Colombian and African blend. So we're all a mix all over Latin America and even North America. So these styles kind of like they get morphed and they packaged in differently, you know. So this is something that I grew up listening, dancing, playing. Once I grew up, I was playing drums. My brother would teach me some of these rhythms, you know. So let's see. So you might be thinking like, yeah, that's cool. You're talking a lot about Mexican music. You know, I had to kind of give you an overview of what I was listening to as a baby. You know, pretty much as a toddler, as a young kid. But I was always listening to Chicano music, right? And which was, in essence, norteño music is one of the first forms, norteño conjunto, right? Almost together, right? It's one of the first forms of Chicano music, right? Because it comes from southern Texas, northern Mexico. And there was a lot of cross-pollination between some of the Austrian and German settlers or immigrants that came, right? And they cross-pollinated, okay? So that's why I'm playing a lot of this stuff, because it's all over northern Mexico. And guess what? That's what they were playing in a bunch of like functions, okay? But you also have bands that are playing American music, okay? Just because it doesn't have to be ethnic or have certain rhythms. Like there was a lot of artists too that were, you know, creating music that was very, very similar to R&B, soul, rock and roll, you know, all that stuff. So I heard that growing up as well. I mean, like for instance, you're listening to Sonny and the Sunliners. This is a Texas group in the in the 60s playing oldies. That's why you hear a lot of Chicanos, you know, into oldies, into oldies and all kinds of stuff. Why? Because we've been in under the radar, but we've been there. You know, we've been playing. I mean, you can trace it back to rock and roll. You can trace it back to Richie Valens. Let's see if I can find some Richie Valens. Man, who hasn't heard this one? So, I mean, this is like jarocho music from Veracruz, okay? And one of the things that I haven't even touched upon is the African influence in Mexico, and it's in our music. And like I said, it's been a lifelong sort of study for me, right? To kind of understand that. I mean, this song is a son jarocho song that is documented. It's Afro-Mexican, okay? And again, you hear the percussion and all of that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about once I got to the States, my upbringing was lowrider culture. Not only because it was already a part of me, because I'm from Mexicali, there was already a lowrider culture there, okay? But it was amplified when I got here to the States. And so I was listening to a lot of hip hop, not early 90s hip hop, you know, old school jams, a lot of oldies. And guess what? Lowriding is a very original, very Chicano thing, okay? And we're very prideful of our roots, even though we may not know all the ethnomusicology behind it and this and that, you know, but they were listening to music that's usually made by brown artists and or artists that can relate to them, you know. So listening to this stuff right here, Richie Valens, oldies, And even the newer soul, like from the 60s and the 70s, from black artists, you know what I mean? Things like that, you know? East Side Story anthologies, you know what I mean? Art LeBeau, listening to all that stuff. And this is the 90s, so you have people really going back and listening to a lot of the classic stuff, influencing yourself, you know, and influencing us and whatnot. So, early 90s, you know, my brothers, you know, my older brother to this day has multiple lowriders, you know, but we grew up like that. And part of the reason why I'm an artist, I'm an audio engineer, producer, and I'm a teacher, right? But part of the reason why I got into audio, this is my home studio, is because I used to be in the back of a lowrider or the back of a car with a nice sound system all the time, and it was one of my fondest memories of my brothers, you know, being in that culture and just listening to all the music. And we were listening to really high quality music, you know, and amongst all that stuff, I ran into Bob Marley too. So you might be wondering, dude, you're a Chicano, like how do you get into Bob Marley? Well, early 90s, my brothers, they were already listening to it, even in Mexicali, in Mexico. But more so, my brothers that are 5 and 6 years older than me, they, you know, it sounded good. That was the number one thing. It sounded really good in the sound systems. And they were reissuing this music that was popular in the late 70s and early 80s onto CD. Right? So you were listening, people were like getting creative with their sound systems, right? They were getting creative with their sound systems. And these reissues of Bob Marley music was just like coming out. And I remember just like loving it because my brothers were into it and I got into it. And you know what? It was counterculture. That was one of the first things, man, that I started realizing that as I got older, that some of the music that I was really, that I liked, not popular culture wasn't really like digging as much, you know? And it is what it is. It helped me identify also as a mixed race individual. Guess what? Bob Marley was a mixed race individual. And you know, with Bob, man, it's been a lifelong relationship because at first I was taken by the audio sonic quality, right? Which is probably what got me into recording. But as I got into college and I started dissecting music, his music, it was one of the most powerful musics that I ever dissected because there was a whole conscious movement, intellectual movement that he was preaching and he was talking about. And it blew my mind how somebody who died so young can write, you know, and such beautiful music. And yeah, it was, you know, a lot of it was against the oppressor and all that stuff, but some of it was very, very conscious, you know. It wasn't, some of it was preachy and some of it wasn't. Some of it was just educational for me. And it was seeds, you know, for me to like, you know, plant and understand my own history. You know, And so it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience for me to really get into it. And I thank my brothers, my brother Abel, my brother Elias, all my brothers, and my brother Francisco for getting me into this type of music. So yeah, that was a big thing. And if you hear my original music, which I'll start getting into, because I mean we're getting here pretty close. It's a big deal. It's reggae, Caribbean music. You know, my own roots is it was very inspiring and very uplifting for me, you know, to listen to this music and connect with this music and whatnot. And like I said before, I took my genealogy test. I already kind of knew. So let's get down to my music. So at first, when I started writing music, I didn't want to be an artist. Okay, I went to school for music industry and recording, took a minor in Spanish. But as I was doing recording projects, the artists that I was recording, they wouldn't come. So I ended up writing music, and it was the same fuel that I had from listening to Bob, listening to a lot of Carlos Santana. That's part of the reason why I got into Afro-Caribbean music too, Carlos Santana. That's the other artist that really influenced me heavily, you know, Carlos Santana. But before I got into that, I started writing music, and guess what? It was a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. Who am I? Why do I listen to this music? Why do Northern African folks and Arab folks like me? Why do they say my brother, or like, you know, or you know, different places? Why do they think that I'm Indian, East Indian? You know, why is my hair sort of curly, you know, when it grows, and my features and this and that, and even just accept people from different parts of the world accepting me, you know. It was I knew something was interesting about my genealogy, and I knew I had to research it, and a lot of that was coming in my music. So, but one of the first songs that I wrote had to do with some of the strife that I encountered living with a single parent, right? So now we're moving on to me creating, right? So we talked this whole thing, I'm talking about different styles, blah, 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 blah. So now I'm gonna show you a song that I did recently, but it's one of the first songs that I wrote. It's a remix, but I remade it in a cumbia, reggae, hard rock, and like hip hop dance hall style. So you're gonna hear the percussion of Santana. You're gonna hear the Colombian rhythms. You're gonna hear the Southern California rock feel, you know, like with the drums. And I did this all completely myself. So I've talked a lot, and I just want you to enjoy this song. It's called East Side. I wrote this about some strife as a kid in the perspective of a little boy. It would be nice.
It would be nice to always wake up to a bright day, singing beautiful melodies, but you know that things aren't quite like that. The other day, Dad sat me asking for some bread.
A drug addict.
He said he needed a little extra to calm his stress.
Drugs. Making grown men forget their faith. Welcome to my life, the East Side. Hard rock into la cumbia, reggaeton, Caribbean flavor. And this is all natural stuff. This is, I mean, I play all these instruments. I did it here. A lot of drugs growing up as a kid. My brothers, violence.
Mother and daughter fighting over some dollars, but nothing could amount to the little baby Donna suffering. No, no. Although so bright sometimes, happy-go-lucky days, it seems to be just fine. When nighttime falls, the devil has some fun. Welcome to the east side. Yeah. Oh my God. East Welcome to the east side. Running wild. I know it's struggling.
And then sort of the same thing, but in Spanish, you know, throw in a little hip hop verse, dance hall verse. But also trying to uplift and educate the youth a little bit. Feed your mind. We're in Aslan.
Aprende de tu historia y procura por tu gente. Somos una raza unida, dile no a la piratería de estos cuentos contra el inmigrante. Qué cosa más ignorante. De todos modos, adelante.
Little Santana influence with the organs. Catch this, my latest release is just me, because I did everything tip to top, every instrument, wrote everything, recorded it in my home studio, you know, very proud of it. But again, and even this, I created a rhythm on the drum set. It's between reggae, it's between roots reggae and cumbia. Because in it's usually that's usually roots, something like that, right? But I added a different. It's a fusion. Anyway, let's go to another one here. I hope this makes some sense to where I'm talking about all these, like, all these influences and all these things about Chicano culture, about Mexican culture, you know, and my upbringing, my personal thing. But now I'm kind of talking a little bit about the music that I'm creating and what's moving me and whatnot. Obviously, there's a little message there too. Now, real quick, I'm gonna talk a little bit of, one second. So, I was blessed to get an education, but the education, you know, I thought I went through strife as a kid. I was out on my own at 16. There was just a lot of things going on. Part of the reason was my mom was a lot older than me. She lived in a different generation, and I was just college bound. I wanted to get out, and I didn't necessarily have the best attitude in the world, you know. I was kind of rough around the edges. I kind of did what I had to do, so I started living with my best friend at the age of 16 and kind of like fending for myself. But when I moved to Los Angeles, once I realized that I wanted to do music industry recording, songwriting, everything. It was mainly music industry and recording. I kind of, you know, met my maker, man. It was another education. So I'm gonna play this song called Mystical Connection, and I want you to just listen to the first verse and it's post 2008. So this is like the economic boom that happened, drop. It was like a recession. There was no jobs. The music industry was changing. There was all kinds of stuff going on. So I wrote this song kind of like post that. See if you enjoy it. It's called Mystical Connection. It's one of my older releases.
feel like a shadow, it's so hard to go on, but it's lights, camera, action, and the show is live. I had to learn about love before moving to the city, but I forgot about heartbreak, easy how the mind breaks down. Living in the future, searching the American dream, complexities invade my mind as I blaze to races, voyager left, 808s and heartbreak. Subconsciously my soul sinks. I'm on the brink, but I'm all in, like he's dealing me the same cards. But I'm willing to die to make my mother proud. It's about who you know, how low you go. There's no remorse, getting scammed on Craigslist. Dead end internships driving me insane. I master pain, your love is vain. I play the game, just another lost soul in the city of angels. Blood, sweat, and tears, overcoming fears, searching for a mystical connection.
And so this song was also, not only was it that, but it had to do with being heartbroken in the city. And it was called Mystical Connection because I wrote this song when I didn't even know what love was. I mean, obviously, I originally wrote it when I didn't know what love was, but once I realized what it was, I went back to that song and I added, deleted, and did what I had to do. So it was kind of like, it means something to me. Searching for our mystical connection, transcending deeper than further explanation, whatever that means. Times are rough. Everything I knew involves you. It's like going mad. I saw my friend going through a breakup one time and I was like, what are you doing, bro? I didn't know. I mean, I've been out on my own since 16, so I didn't really get into a real relationship till I was like 23 or 24 because I just knew I had to get an education, I had to get a degree, and I had to, like, you know, fend for myself. But once, man, it was a real interesting tale because when I moved to Los Angeles, I started my business, I had money in the bank, but I missed somebody, and it was that person. Don't ever underestimate relationships and the effect and the void that happens. Even though that person may not be good for you, it's a void that's like a chemical imbalance. I don't need a scientist to tell me what that is, but I felt that. It's like you're used to being with somebody and you're not with them, even though you know they're not good for you. It's just a void. Now listen to the Santana influence on this, man. Organ. As a guitar solo, obviously. Alright, guys. But like I said, you know, if you enjoyed this or if you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm ready for your questions. Catch my music. I have new music online, you know, everywhere. And I'm on social media if you want to continue the conversation. I do music as a selfless deed. It's not about me. You know what I mean? I don't need to be doing this. I do it because God gave me a gift and I need to share it.
Jahny, you have some comments. I can read them out to you.
Sure.
Viva Hernandez says, love all the music you are playing. And Adriana Dehan says, I love how you explain how the mix of cultures can make for a new and unique identity.
Thank you so much.
I've shared your social media handles in the chat for anybody that is interested. Any final questions for Jahny? We're going to start to wrap up soon. This was a wonderful journey through music. I think a lot of us were dancing in our chairs.
Good.
Well, we thank you. Thank you all for joining us in our exploration through music and identity. I thank you, Jahny, for sharing your journey with us and all this wonderful music. I appreciate all the attendees coming today. And Hannah
Thank
Faith
you.
says, so glad to have you share your gift with us. Keep it up and good luck. So,
Thank you for bringing me year after year. It means a lot, for me, and I'm sure it means a lot to other people, looking for some identity, and some push, like as like-minded people or people that are interested in learning about other cultures and other people. And the more you look into it, the more you realize we're very similar.
absolutely, absolutely. And Viva Hernandez says, thank you for all the stuff you shared. Adriana says, you're very inspiring, and I agree. It's
Oh,
always
thank you so
wonderful to
much.
have you here. It's a pleasure to have you join us at our festival, and hopefully we'll be live again next year. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We have more events throughout the day. There is a link in the chat for the schedule of events. We have our finale poetry slam at 4 o'clock. Please join us for that. We have some great, talented students that will be performing live their spoken word. And if you haven't had a chance, fill out the survey for this panel. Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, Jahny. Thank you, Silas. Thanks, everybody, for your time and your efforts. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jahny.
Thanks, man. I'm so sorry